So the idea behind this video is an idea that I've had for a very long time. Usually when I watch tutorials, what I like to do is everything going on behind the scenes. Everything that the person who is making the tutorial is teaching and how did he come up with all of those ideas. And what I wanted to do for today is I wanted to take that process and actually show it to you, how I come up with the ideas that I do. So what I want to do is make the tutorial the actual session in which I do some experimentation with the idea to get a kind of a feel for how it works. Now that means that we won't have a sound ready immediately, so I'm going to hop back in the edit and take the last bit of this video and put it in here so you can get a demo of what we're going to make in this tutorial. So here we are in an empty project file. When I do experimentation like this, I like to start off with just an empty track so that I have all the space to work with. And what we're going to do for today is we're going to experiment with ambient plucks. I thought this would be a good topic to actually use for this kind of video. And the reason for that is I have some basic knowledge on ambience and I've never really applied it to plucks. So it is actually a new process for me. So for the start here, I want to start off with kind of an arpeggio kind of ARP thing. So what I will do is I will go to my standard device for this, which nowadays is Septic, and I'll just load it up. This is what I use to make all kinds of ARPs and sequences. So here I just pick a scale that I like. I like to work around G sharp, and I like to work within Frisian. So that's kind of the area that I'm familiar with. I'm trying to keep things as restricted as possible in these cases. I don't want to experiment with the melody and the sound design and the processing and the finalizing and all that stuff. I want to keep the focus on actual ambience. So for something like the melody, I will just stay within the bounds of what I like to actually work with. So I'm just going to create something quick here. I will randomize this and then we'll go back to it later. First, I want to load up a basic sound here. And again, I don't want to worry too much about the sound design. So I'm actually going to go into my Melda here and use Sound Factory and see if there's a sound in here that we can use for this. I actually already have the plugs open. We can go to the soft plugs and we can maybe browse some presets here. So I decided to go with this very simplistic kind of sine pluck here. And now we have a basic sound to use for our melody. I do want to go into the edit and quickly see if I can turn off the reverb that's on here. There seems to be also delay, which I also don't want. So I've just turned that off as well. And now we just have the dry sound coming in into our DAW. Let's quickly make this melody a little bit better. I'm going to set some very basic limitations on the melody here. I just tend to look at it like that. And then I want the 9 down. I do want that high note in there. And as you can see, I'm basically implementing a basic rhythm for now. I don't go into much detail on the music theory kind of thing because I'm not really experienced enough to actually make tutorials on that kind of stuff. So finally, this is the final ARP that I come up with. So that's what we're dealing with here. So now I want to go into the actual ambience. And first of all, what I want to do is I do want to get a little bit of volume back here. As you can see, we are playing very, very low. So I want to gain stage this properly. So now that we have that, I can work with some ambience plugins. So at this point, I like to go into different plugins and actually try out some different settings. So let's start with a delay. What I like to do is just load up a few of them. Let's take this delay as well. And maybe we will use the H delay here from Waves. And we'll see if we can get some nice sounds out of each of them. I'm going to start off with the Echo Boy here. So let's close out of these two. I'll put this down below. Let's set this to dotted, for example. I'm just going through and learning what the different settings on this do, if they actually add some nice texture to the ambience that I'm trying to create. So for example, if we set it to ambient, I don't like the sound of the ambient one for this one, so I'm going to go with the space one here. And again, we can play with other parameters, but we kind of get the idea of what we're after here in terms of the delay sound. So then I do the same thing with this H delay, where there's a lot fewer options. So I basically have to set this, I want to set it to the same length. So 3/16 is a dotted note. And now I can pan this to get a ping pong delay, and let's set the mix to the same amount as well. And here we just get a normal delay from. So what this tells me is that if I want to use a delay on an ambient sound, then this is probably not the delay to use for that, because it isn't really capable of producing more ambient sounds. I would also say that for the Echo Boy, there are some more options. We tried out the ambient option, which I didn't really like, but the space option went very well. I am still kind of disappointed that I wasn't able to get a nicer ambience to it though. So let's try H delay. Again, it's the same form of experimentation. I try to keep the parameters fairly similar. So I'm going to again set a lower dry wet. And what I know for this one is that we want to turn the feedback up a little bit. And let's set it to ping pong. And here we can hear some kind of saturation and distortion. So maybe the analog needs to be turned off. You can also low pass it a bit to get a little bit of a darker feel, but we can still hear that this kind of saturation is still present. So now I know that in the future, if I want a kind of saturated sound in my delays to make the delays pop a little bit more, then I would go for H delay. And even outside of Ambient Plucks, then this might be a helpful thing to know about your plugins. So I'm going to look for a different plugin that does more of what I like. And I'm going to go with Black Hole here. So let's see if we can get some nice sounds out of Black Hole. I'll go through some of the presets here. Let's see if we can find something with a delay on it, because this is able to do also delays. Now this is already giving us more ambient kind of sound, and that's what I like. I still have that kind of delay feeling. The only annoyance here is that it's not stereo. What I would like is more of a ping pong kind of delay. So what we should be able to do is create a rack to create that effect for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create two chains here, and I'm going to pan them hard left and hard right. And then I want to create another audio effect rack, which is going to act as our dry wet. So there's going to be a dry chain and a wet chain. I'm just going to set the wet chain a little bit lower for now. Let's do some volume down so that we don't go too high in volume. And now for these ones, what we essentially need to do to get the ping pong effect is to delay this reverb part by half the length of the delay sounds that we've set in here. So we need to delay it by a dotted 16 note. And we do that on one of the two channels so that the channels are offset, creating a ping pong effect. Actually, before we do that, what I would like to do is preserve the 1/8 dotted note feeling and not switch over to a 1/16 dotted note feeling, which is essentially what you do when you off-shift a channel like that. So I'm going to use this one for my delay. I'm going to keep it at 1/8 dotted note stereo, and that means that I need to set this to a dotted quarter note. And I'll do the same for the other one. And essentially this should give me a delay Actually, if I set the mix to 100, that is important as well. This is a completely wet change, so we have to set all of the mixes to 100. And now we should have a ping pong delay with this black hole. Let's see. It's not quite what I wanted, it isn't as delayy as I wanted, but it's still a very nice ambient sound. Now I do think with the way that we have set it up now, we are still lacking a little bit of the depth that I want from some true ambient sounds. So let's see if we can take this dry channel and add something onto there, like this convolution reverb, which is a reverb that I've been experimenting with as well. And I've found that this Ellie Chapel preset works phenomenally. I'm going to make it a little bit brighter. And now that we've settled on this effect, I want to delete all of the other ones that I don't want to use anymore. And I just want to go on into some cleaning up and stuff like that. With just some EQ work, I've decided to give it a little bit more definition. As you can see, we had to use quite a drastic curve for that, but we're still in the space of sound design, so I'm okay with that. In terms of mixing, if you receive something from a client, you probably don't want to do curves like this, but when you're sound designing like this, you can use filters more creatively and EQs more creatively and really shape the tone of your sound like we're doing here. So the end result of that is something like this. So everything up until that was my first experiment with these ambient plucks. Now what I want to do is I want to do another one. And I want to keep going until I'm comfortable with a few of the techniques that I might want to show in the tutorial, if this were an actual session for tutorial, which obviously this is not because we are already making the tutorial. And if you're a frequent watcher of my live streams, you might know that this approach is not really new to me. I've been doing this for a long time when I did sound design requests, and I did those in live streams for a long time. And basically we would go through each request until I was satisfied with either getting close to the original sound that they wanted me to recreate, or if we find some useful bit of information about processing and about sound design or something like that. And in this case it's the same. So let's move on to the second example here. And for now I want to get a different approach. I just kind of want something, instead of an ARP, I want more of a melody. So I'm actually going to write this in MIDI. And again, I'm not going to worry with too much music theory. I'm just going to play something that I know might work. So this is the melody that I came up with. I quickly sound designed a very simple pluck, but we're going to get into the sound design a lot more. So let's just quickly have a listen to it so that we know what we're working with. So a nice repeating melody that you can use in a break or wherever. So what I want to do is I want to create kind of a washed out sound from this, because I want it to be very ambient and very spacey. So what I want to start off with is looking at a few different categories of sound design tricks that I can use to actually achieve that. And all of these things you pick up over the years actually doing sound design. So one of them is the use of unison. So we can crank up the unison on this oscillator and we can listen to what that sounds like. And we get a nice stereo sounding washed out sound instead of the clickiness that you get from just one waveform. Another thing that I know will work here is to actually randomize the phases of this waveform. So let's go into the waveform editor and hit randomize all. And this will wash it out even more, because as you can see there's no longer a click like it used to be in the old saw wave. It is kind of all washed out in terms of the higher frequencies. So you can hear this is very much a detail. It's not so clear as our previous example of the unison, but it still contributes to the overall sound that we're trying to create. So let's continue here with some effects. I'm going to start with a hyper, and I just want to set this to retrigger because I want it to be a little bit more consistent than it is in free running mode. I'm going to add it in. Same with the dimension expander, which already gives us a little bit more of an idea of space. You can add a chorus as well. And I want to restrict it to the high frequencies. I'm going to turn down the depth and set the rate to 0, so it's static. Now I can decide if I want to use this reverb here. There's a few cool things that we can do with the reverb. For example, we can assign this envelope that we're using for the filter cutoff also to the reverb. Can give it some extra release. What might be cool is to create kind of a glide effect at this point. So I'm going to go mono legato, turn this up and go into always, see if this works. Let's add a delay as well. Going to go with a 1/8 dotted. Now this is kind of the delay that I want, but it's not giving me the exact clarity in the delay that I'm after. So again, here I'm going to switch to a different effect to emulate that. In this case, I'm going with the M turbo delay, and I'm just going to again browse through some presets, and what I'm looking for is something atmospheric. So let's go for that. Let's see if we can set the dry wet a little bit higher. Let's actually go for maybe something like a rhythm here. So after playing with some settings here, I think I found something that I like. Now I do want to clean up this delay a little bit, so I'm again going to use an audio effect rack here and create 2 chains so that we can set this to fully wet, and we can actually EQ the wet signal on its own. I just want to give it a bit more brightness. And we get something like that. And now again, I want to add another reverb to it just to round it out a little bit and give it a bit more space. So I'm going to again go with the Convolution Reverb Pro because that's one that I really like. And I'm just going to add a tad bit of extra reverb in there. Of course, in the sound design process we already used reverb, but I just want to round it out a little bit. And then with some final EQing. Actually, this might be a moment to implement another trick that I know of, and that is to use a specific plugin to actually brighten up your sound. This is also a nice trick to share with you guys so that you can implement it as well in your sound design. And the plugin that we're going to be using is this free Lufticus plugin. So I'm just going to pop it in here, and I'm going to turn off band number 4 so that we can use this instead. And we're going to boost the 40K mark here, which sounds a little bit ridiculous, but it actually works because the filter kind of slopes off towards the higher frequencies and it gives it a nice air. Another plugin that I know works particularly well for these kind of cases is this Eliza Niveau filter here. And we can set it to a frequency of ×10 and again bump it up. And we're going to go in around 10,000 here and just give it a few dB of boost. Switching these around obviously makes a change as well. You can decide, okay, maybe we want some more saturation on there. I like to use Lux for that. That's a plugin that I like for this kind of thing. I'm going to slightly turn down the output. Now we're getting a little bit of a snap or a click at the start of the sound, and that's not really what I'm after. So I'm going to go back into my sound design here and just give it a little bit of extra attack so that we get rid of that click. So now that is what we have. Now I could go on experimenting more and more, but I like to do that on things like a stream because that's more interactive. So if you ever see me going live, then it's a good time to hop in and we can discuss sound design and I can show you processes like that. Also while I'm actually producing, that's also very interesting because at that point you're no longer experimenting to just get an idea of the sound designing techniques, you're really trying to get a sound out of it. In this case, I wasn't planning on actually using these sounds to actually produce something. So for now, I'm going to leave it with these two examples. If you have any questions or suggestions, then leave a comment down below. If you want me to do more of these kind of videos where I walk you through the actual experimentation process, then let me know. If you did enjoy this video, you can also let me know by leaving a like. And if you're new here and you want to see more of my stuff, then subscribe. Finally, if you want to receive notifications whenever I upload, there's a bell icon right next to the subscribe button and you can turn that on and then YouTube will send you a message every time I post something. But for now, that's going to be the video. I hope you enjoyed and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.
In a very deep and bitter sense.